Okay, let's take a look here.
Base.
Get educated.
Today, we'll be exploring how
pants.
China transformed into a communist state despite thousands of years of dynastic rule. And as always, we'll need to wind back the clock to really understand how this process unfolded. Throughout the 17th century...
Dude, I haven't been in school for 12 years, but you younger kids, you must get so much more knowledge from the internet than actual teachers, which at some point isn't even the teacher's fault. Let's say you're looking at... Let's not take World War II. Let's take this, the Japanese, China. If you sit down and watch 2 hours of YouTube videos, you know more than 2 hours of class, and it's not the teacher's fault. It's just how do you keep up with this? The fucking pictures, the voices, the quality, man. It's the future, man. It's really the future. Back in the day, I always said that teachers that always watch. You know, back in the day, years ago, there was sometimes a teacher that just said, "Okay, we're gonna watch a movie now for 2 hours," and the whole class, yeah, because no one cares, right? We're watching a movie. And I was always making fun of that, watching a movie in class. You're a lazy teacher. It makes so much sense, right? You should totally, like if I was a history teacher in Germany, I will totally watch Schindler's List with my class. That has so much more educational impact. So yeah, this is the future, man, I guess.
In the 19th century, the Qing Dynasty loosely reigned over China, as it was plagued by regionalism and corruption.
More in
to make
Minecraft
matters worse,
about
European
science than in
merchants
science.
arrived in China en
Maybe
masse
that's why
during
your
the
generation
18th
isn't doing
century.
so.
These Westerners arriving were driven by fiscal interests, and some would later say that it was the wave of merchants who would spell China's near ruin. Meanwhile, in Japan, things were looking up after their decisive victory over the Chinese in the Sino-Japanese War. In Richard Bernstein's work, he writes this of the conflict.
Schindler's List is a little hard for school. 9, 10, 11, 12 class, when the kids of 16, you should... I always said this, you should make them watch Schindler's List. When you're 16, you're ready for what you're about to see. Would you show class 14 for meta? Minecraft has an educational edition with chemistry and stuff. What?
Japan's major goal was the possession of Korea and Manchuria, the vast landmasses just across the sea that were stepping stones towards the even larger prize, which was China. This defeat prompted cries for reform, and after a series of failed revolts, including the 1899 Boxer Rebellion, the Qing government...
Like, I so often heard about the Boxer Rebellion, but I don't know shit about it. I know it was started by boxers, I guess, but I have no idea. I've read about it a million times, but
even more precarious
no clue what that is.
By 1911, the government was fully overthrown in what was called the Wu Chang Revolution. The leaders of this revolution selected the exiled intellectual Sun Yat-sen to be China's first president in 1912. However, their territories were limited to southern China. Meanwhile, the boy emperor
because of the emblem.
remained in power in the north. He was backed by General...
The Qing Empress wanted all foreigners out of China, and she ordered the Boxers to kill them all.
Yuan Shikai, who had the largest army in the region, and therefore pretty much called the shots. Thus, Sun Yat-sen won Shikai over to his side without bloodshed by offering him the presidency. From there, things didn't exactly go as planned. Yuan imposed a military dictatorship and exiled Sun Yat-sen after he formed the opposing Kuomintang, or KMT. In 1916, Yuan proclaimed himself Emperor of China, pretty much missing the point of the rebellion entirely. He quickly lost much of his support, and after his death, China was once again balkanized.
I mean, the worst things about revolutions is that most of the time, if your revolution works, you just replace the old system with a new one that's just has almost equal the problems, man.
Into regions under the control of local warlords. After Yuan died, Sun Yat-sen returned to China, and at the helm of the nationalist Kuomintang Party, was able to take power and impose yet another military government in 1921. Shortly after, in
Apparently there's a teacher in class. When my pupils misused the swastika, I forced them to watch Schindler's List. If that's true, man, that's a good teacher. You're totally, yeah. Everybody name one movie. It's gonna be the fucking memes. Shrek 1 and 2. Everybody name one movie that all pupils, students in the world or in your country should see. And mods ban everyone with a meme. 12 Years a Slave? I never watched it. I want to really watch that. Lisa always says no. I don't know what's wrong with her. Schindler's List is the #1 downfall. I never watched The Pianist, man. Saving Private Ryan, come on, man. Schindler's List, yeah, pretty much. Dunkirk, Band of Brothers, that's some bad answers. Like movies that bring across a big message and not just epic scenes and stuff. Dance with the Wolves, Lord of the Rings, Mastering. Oh my god. Good thing most of you guys are not fucking teachers. Die Welle is a very good German answer. Die Welle is very good for Germany. I need to watch 12 Years a Slave, man. I always tell Lisa I want to start a little movie cycle about what's his name? Daniel Day-Lewis. I want to start watching Daniel Day-Lewis movies, but Lisa doesn't want to see them. Full Metal Jacket? Yeah. All Quiet on the Western Front. We had to read the book in school. All Quiet on the Western Front.
They sealed cooperation
I think Schindler's List is the top one answer.
China, or CPC,
Thank you,
in exchange for assistance in ending regionalism. The CPC
Schindler's
had
List
been
is the
founded in
rank
the
one
wake of
answer.
the May 4th movement, which involved a series of student protests formed in opposition to the Chinese government's ineffective response.
I don't mean this, Mimi. I mean this. 3 weeks ago, I watched a movie that blew my mind called The Big Short. You shouldn't watch it in school, but I think everybody needs to watch The Big Short because it shows how fucked our Western world is and how we are all fucked.
Response to the Treaty of
That
Versailles,
movie blew my
which
mind, man.
transferred what was formerly Chinese-owned land to the Japanese.
Best movie I've seen in a long time.
The May 4th movement popularized Marxism as a radical alternative to the Kuomintang. Really, the only reason the CPC aligned itself with the KMT was so it could spread communism as it liberated each warlord state with the assistance of the much stronger KMT. In 1925, Sun Yat-sen died, leaving China in the
Lots of
hands
economic
of
classes
Chiang
make you watch
Kai-shek,
Big Short.
who 2 years later initiated what was known as
The
the
boy in striped
White
pajamas?
Terror
Yeah.
in response to a communist plot to overthrow him. This resulted in the deaths of thousands of members of the CPC. In the aftermath, communist leaders Li Lixun and Mao Zedong began waging a guerrilla war against the Kuomintang. While this was happening, the Soviet Union, who saw the CPC as their communist allies, directed it to take a more aggressive stance against the Kuomintang. As a result, Li Lixun ordered an offensive to be carried out against the nationalists.
365 Days, I never heard of that movie.
It was a disaster and led to his replacement by a group of Chinese intellectuals called the 28 Bolsheviks. With warlords still in control of numerous regions and the two major political factions of China in all-out war, the situation was looking worse than ever. Seeing the turmoil unfold, the shadow of Japan once again loomed over China. In 1931, they sent roughly 45,000 men to occupy Chinese Manchuria. With no troops to spare, the Kuomintang was forced to concede without resistance.
To take this entire area.
Chiang now understood that he needed to defeat the CPC before China was fully invaded. To this end, Chiang assembled the largest Kuomintang army yet, and in 1934 encircled Mao's guerrilla forces stationed in the mountains. The climax of this episode was the Long March, which began when the CPC devised a near-suicidal plan to break through Chiang's encirclement and march over 6,000 miles to regroup in the north. About half of the CPC's forces were lost when crossing the Shan River, a decision which the 28 Bolsheviks shouldered responsibility for. In the wake of this debacle, Mao took control of the communists. By the time the remnants of the CPC reached their northern destination, only 10% of them were still alive, prompting Mao to launch. Man.
Actually, you gotta give Mao Zedong and the communists some slack. They got destroyed, man. 10% left, and they still take over China in the end. Fuck.
A massive recruitment.
It's pretty crazy, man.
Recognizing that if the Japanese invaded, both they and the Kuomintang would be destroyed, Mao sought to form yet another united front. Chiang was vehemently opposed to the offer, but his generals weren't. They took matters into their own hands, taking Chiang hostage and pressuring him to accept Mao's offer. Chiang eventually decided to accept and formed what was called the Second United Front in 1937. When Japan did invade that year, the Kuomintang proved unable to fully
generals, they
repulse
should
the
have not done
invaders,
it.
something which worried the Chinese people, and Mao capitalized on this discontent to recruit even more men to his cause. Furthermore, his forces did not engage.
That's what I always talk about. Like, I always am a guy, I kind of think that Mao Zedong was a better male pussy bitch. Because the guys are defending against Japan. Japan wants to fucking destroy our entire country. And instead of helping, you're just backstabbing, recruiting people, stealing guns and shit. And in the end, oh, big fucking victory, man.
And see. Very good movie that follows a Russian 12-year-old partisan. It shows the atrocities of the German occupation of Eastern Europe. It's an anti-war movie I would make every living person watch. The movie was worse for me than Schindler.
Thank you for the nation average, TommyKay, man. Thank you. Okay, noted. Yeah, I probably will never be able to go back to China. Don't forget about the Mao's law of getting rid of all sparrows. What? Both the CCP and the Kuomintang are both corrupt and don't care for lives. Well, one was defending against Japan, though, and the other one was backstabbing.
Japan very frequently, allowing the Kuomintang to bear the brunt of the Japanese onslaught. After Japan surrendered to the Allies in 1945, the Kuomintang and CPC ended the Second United Front. It only took 1 year for the Chinese Civil War to rage on yet again. The CPC was now armed with leftover Japanese weapons and equipment, had newfound support from the populace, and faced a foe who suffered 3.2 million casualties against the Japanese, whereas the communists lost approximately 440,000.
very clever by the communists. You got Game of Thrones, baby. After a highly successful guerrilla campaign, both Beijing and Nanking had fallen to the communists. With the capture of these two major cities, it would not be long before Mao was victorious and the People's Republic of China was established. Chiang Kai-shek and the defeated Kuomintang government went into exile in Taiwan in 1949, which to this day still has the official name of the Republic of China. Under Mao's 30-year reign, tens of millions of people starved. Dude, real life makes better stories than any book or movie, I swear to God.
Even so, it is still debated to this day whether Mao contributed to China's modernization or whether he delayed its development. Either way, the Chinese government still sees Mao as one of their founding fathers. Now back to our sponsor. Recently, Squarespace...
The 4 Pests campaign was one of the first actions taken the Great Leap Forward in China from 1958 to 1962. The 4 pests to be eliminated were rats, flies, mosquitoes, and sparrows. It resulted in severe ecological imbalance, being one of the causes for the Great Chinese Famine. I just said you can't make this shit up, man. You can't make this shit up. They had a big resolution to kill sparrows. And we're causing a famine. Digga.